Have you ever noticed how some people gain profound influence and control, not by demanding attention, but by consciously choosing to withdraw?
Hmm.
This power lies in refusing the immediate automatic response, shifting the entire energy dynamic, and thereby forcing others to confront their own expectations and dependencies.
Right.
When you become selective with your time and energy, everything around you shifts. Because predictability, your constant availability, is the first thing that ensures you are treated as a resource rather than a person.
Welcome to Philosophy episode, Emotional Sovereignty, the Power of Conscious Unavailability.
Share your thoughts in the comments.
Okay, let's just dive right into this because, it feels so contrary to everything we're told.
It really is. The modern world is all about speed, right? Being
Mm.
responsive, being visible.
Exactly. And yet, all this material we've been looking at suggests that actually the real power is in the opposite. It's in the deliberate choice not to engage.
To be consciously absent. So our mission in this deep dive is to really explore the psychological and philosophical backbone of that idea, of that withdrawal, and figure out why it's such a gateway to emotional sovereignty for you.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? And I think the best place to start, the person who really gave us the modern language for this is Carl Jung.
Ah, okay. Jung.
He provides this foundational lens that, true change means turning the gaze inward, even when the problem seems to be coming from outside.
Right, and we've all heard that famous Jung quote, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves.
We have, and that's usually used as a tool for, introspection.
Yeah.
Looking for your own shadow in other people.
Sure.
But this idea of conscious unavailability, it completely flips the script on that quote. It turns it into a relational tool.
How so? What do you mean by that?
Well, when you consciously choose to become inaccessible emotionally, or just with your time, the irritation or desperation that pops up in the other person, it's not about you anymore. It becomes this perfect psychological mirror for them.
So it forces them to see their own stuff.
Exactly. Their own dependencies, their projections, maybe even their sense of entitlement to your time and energy.
So if I'm the one who always manages the crisis in my family or friend group.
Right. The designated crisis manager.
And I decide to just step back.
Yeah.
I stop answering the frantic calls immediately, and someone gets angry at me for it. Their anger isn't really about me being unavailable.
It's about the fact that their scaffolding just disappeared.
Wow.
Your absence exposed their expectation that you are a predictable tool in their life. You're the emotional emergency button they press for validation or to calm down.
And when the button stops working.
The crisis they feel is entirely their own. It's happening inside their own architecture, not yours. And that right there is the moment you reclaim your emotional sovereignty.
You stop being responsible for managing their internal weather.
You got it.
But I guess the big question that comes up for me, and probably for a lot of people listening, is, doesn't that sound a bit cold?
Yeah.
Especially if the person genuinely is struggling. How do we draw the line between, healthy empathy and this kind of strategic, self-preserving withdrawal?
That is the essential question, isn't it? And I think the answer really lies in your intention and maybe more importantly, your capacity.
Capacity.
Yeah. Conscious unavailability is never meant to be a punishment. It's an act of preservation. It's about finally admitting you can't pour from an empty cup.
And that real compassion comes from a place of fullness, not
exhaustion. So much of what we call empathy is actually just a fear of rejection or a need to be seen as the good guy.
That's a hard truth.
It is. But if you look at the historical roots of this idea of internal mastery was always seen as the highest priority.
Okay, so this isn't just some new self-help trend. This has deep philosophical roots.
Millennia deep. And we have to start with the Stoics.
Right. Epictetus.
Exactly. Epictetus is, I think, the perfect starting point for defining this internal sovereignty. And what makes his teaching so powerful is his background.
He was born a slave.
He was born into literal physical bondage. He knew what it was like to have zero control over his body or his circumstances, and yet his entire focus was on the freedom of the mind.
That context is everything. It shows that this isn't about controlling your environment. It's about commanding your inner landscape.
Precisely. His whole philosophy is built on what's called the dichotomy of control.
Okay, break that down for us.
It's the absolute distinction between what is up to us and what is not up to us.
And what's up to us?
Our judgments, our impulses, our desires.
Yeah.
And most importantly for this conversation, our emotional responses and our availability. That's all in our domain.
And everything else, what other people do, what happens in the world, even our health to some degree, That's outside of our control.
Right. And the Stoics believe that all human misery comes from trying to control what isn't yours to control.
And our availability, our energy, that's 100% within our dominion. Yet
Yeah.
we surrender it every single day.
We give it away for free. And, the sources we looked at suggest we do it because it's a distraction. It's easier to manage someone else's chaos than to do the hard work of managing ourselves.
So conscious unavailability is it's taking back the keys to your own kingdom.
It's reclaiming sovereignty over what was always yours. It's the ultimate act of self-command.
And it wasn't just a philosophy for the powerless. You have Marcus Aurelius, literally the most powerful man in the world at the time,
For an emperor.
saying the exact same thing in his private journal in Meditations.
He did. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength."
So even an emperor knew that true strength wasn't about commanding armies, but about commanding himself.
Exactly. He proved that maintaining your inner composure, your inner peace, whether you're running an empire or just dealing with a demanding relative, is the ultimate form of power.
When we're always available, we're basically giving other people and events veto power over our own minds.
We are. But when we practice conscious unavailability, we're saying, I am the emperor of my internal world and my energy budget is a state secret.
I love that, the state secret. Okay, so the Stoics give us the Western framework for control. Where do we go to understand the energy itself that we're trying to protect?
For that, we have to look east. It's a perfect pivot to Taoism.
The concept of qi.
Yes, qi, the vital life energy that flows through everything. And in Taoism, qi isn't infinite, it's a resource.
It has to be cultivated and conserved.
Or it's dissipated. It's wasted through reckless action or more often impulsive reaction.
So when we're constantly reacting, defending ourselves, people-pleasing.
We are hemorrhaging our qi, we're leaking vital energy.
And this connects directly to the idea of wu-wei, right?
It does. Wu-wei gets translated as non-action or effortless action, but it's not about being passive.
It's strategic.
It's strategic restraint. The Tao Te Ching suggests that mastery comes from avoiding wasteful reactions to things that don't really matter. It's like water flowing around a rock instead of trying to smash through it.
So our conscious unavailability is our personal wu-wei.
It's our way of flowing around the unnecessary conflicts and demands, conserving our energy for what's truly important, our own growth, our own purpose.
And conserving that energy is, it's more critical now than ever before.
Oh, absolutely. The pressure is immense.
Why is it so much greater now than, say, 30 years ago?
Because the default modern condition is what you could call perpetual presence.
Perpetual presence.
Digital technology has built this architectural expectation that we are accessible 24/7. Your phone is always there. The emails are always coming in.
It's like this low-level hum of anxiety in the background all the time.
A relentless ambient drain. It's the voice that says, I have to check that. I need to respond now. What will they think if I don't?
The source has called this a form of self-abandonment.
And it is. It's the ultimate betrayal of the self, really. We trade our actual peace, our real energy, for these little scraps of validation or the temporary avoidance of a difficult conversation.
And that's what leads to that chronic tiredness and emptiness so many people feel.
They're just depleted. They're leaking energy into 100 different dynamics that don't honor them or nourish them.
So the stakes here are actually, they're existential.
They are, because this conscious withdrawal, this act of pulling your energy back, is the very first step toward Jung's ultimate goal for a human life: individuation.
The process of becoming a whole, authentic, complete person.
And you simply cannot become whole while your energy is scattered across everyone else's expectations and crises. Individuation requires gathering yourself back together, piece by piece.
And that starts with intentional absence.
It's the refusal to be consumed by other people's sense of urgency.
Okay, that is a powerful context. From Stoic command to Taoist energy, all the way to the Jungian need for individuation. Let's get really specific now. How do we define conscious unavailability in simple terms?
In the simplest terms, it's not retreat as an escape. It's withdrawal as an act of power and awareness.
Okay, so it's not just running away from stress.
No. It's a deliberate choice. It's an act of selectivity and discernment about where and how you invest your most precious resources, your emotional and psychological energy.
You're deciding to keep that energy inside your own system instead of letting it get pulled out by every little thing.
Precisely. It's not slamming the door because you're angry or overwhelmed. It's calmly choosing not to open the door in the first place because you know the interaction won't serve your well-being.
You're replacing the reflex of just being available.
with the ritual of intentionality.
I like that, the ritual of intentionality.
You're inserting that sacred pause between the stimulus, the text message, the urgent email, and your response. You're making sure your action comes from your higher level brain, not your primitive impulse to just please everyone.
But the reason this feels so revolutionary is because so many of us are trapped in what the sources call the prison of overavailability.
A prison we build for ourselves.
So let's dissect the walls of that prison. It starts with the masks we wear, right?
It starts with the masks. It starts with Jung's concept of the persona.
The social mask.
Yeah, the role we adopt to fit in. The helper, the rescuer, the peacekeeper, the good employee. It's the version of us that's curated to be accepted, loved, or at least recognized by the group.
And that persona is what keeps us available, because it needs that external validation to survive.
It lives on it. We become so identified with that helpful mask that we actually think we're being virtuous. We think we're being a good person.
When really we're just performing a role that's slowly suffocating our real self.
Exactly. And to go deeper on that, we have to look at Alice Miller's concept of the false self.
Okay, how does that differ from the persona?
It's more about the origins. Miller found that some children develop this false self specifically to meet the emotional needs of their parents. They learn very early on to neglect their own authentic feelings and development.
They learn that their true self is inconvenient.
Or unwanted. And that their value, their worth, is tied directly to how useful and accommodating they are.
And that programming just continues right into adulthood.
It does. It turns the person into a perpetual emotional caretaker. They are hardwired to prioritize everyone else's feelings, which means they have to be perpetually available.
And the conflict that creates is just devastating. The more you show up on other people's stages, the more you disappear from your own life.
Your own life becomes an afterthought. The false self is designed to maintain availability at all costs because that availability guarantees you stay in the good graces of others.
Even if it guarantees your own misery.
It guarantees you'll be seen as good, but your existence is reduced to your utility. You become a tool, not a soul. You become predictable. And predictability is the absolute enemy of sovereignty.
This conditioning runs so deep. We're taught that being a good person means saying yes when we mean no, responding instantly.
It's a prison, not a virtue.
Yeah.
That's what the sources are so clear about. And it creates a very specific social dynamic.
The emotional emergency button.
That's it. People learn they can press you for a quick hit of attention or relief or validation. And then once they feel better,
They put you back on the shelf until the next time.
and the tragedy is you're trapped in this illusion that if you're just present enough for everyone, eventually someone will be truly present for you. But it doesn't work that way.
It just makes you a more reliable resource for outsourced emotional labor.
Yes.
Let's make this really concrete. What are some of those small daily acts of self-abandonment that we're all doing?
Oh, they're everywhere, especially now. It's
Yeah.
the reflex to answer a non-urgent work email at 10 p.m. because you're worried about how your silence will look.
Or picking up the phone for a friend who is always in a crisis, even when you had that hour set aside for yourself to just read a book or go for a walk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or what about just the constant need to explain and justify yourself?
Ugh, that's a huge one. That takes up so much energy.
It's a massive energy drain. You get some baseless criticism, and you feel this overwhelming urge to defend your position, to write a long reply, to get into a useless argument with someone who has no intention of actually hearing you.
When just, silence would have been the more powerful and self-preserving response.
Right. Or just saying, it's okay when you are absolutely suffocating inside with resentment.
Or staying in dynamics where you're constantly trying to please people who clearly don't value you just to keep this fragile, fake peace.
Every single one of those small forced yeses is a piece of your peace that you're giving away. And that leads us straight into the economics of why we're all so tired.
Okay, perfect. Section 3, the economics and psychology of energy depletion. Let's get into the science of it.
And we have to go back to Jung for the basic architecture. He saw the psyche as an energy system. Every thought, every emotion, every action consumes a finite amount of psychic energy.
And it's not a metaphor. It's the actual fuel for our consciousness, our attention, our self-control.
It's absolutely real, and its allocation is the defining choice of our lives. When that energy is constantly flowing, outward reacting, defending, pleasing, it's just not available for inner work.
Like individuation or creative projects or even just resting.
Exactly. A healthy psyche, Jung believed, knows how to keep its energy within the system. It knows how to say no without guilt, how to stay silent without feeling like a coward, and how to observe before it acts.
But what's the measurable cost of that outflow? What does modern science say about this psychic exhaustion?
Well, this is where the work of psychologist Roy Baumeister on ego depletion is so important.
Yeah.
His research basically proves that our willpower and our emotional resources work like a muscle. They get tired.
So every time I have to force a smile in a meeting, or manage someone's emotions, or explain a boundary,
You're doing a rep. You're draining that reservoir of ego strength.
so if I spend my whole morning dealing with a coworker's drama because I was too available, I literally have less mental energy that afternoon to resist ordering takeout instead of cooking, or to stick with a difficult task.
That is the direct practical implication. Constant emotional labor being perpetually available measurably depletes your capacity for self-regulation later on.
So a lack of boundaries isn't just a relationship problem, it's a cognitive problem.
It's a measurable cognitive failure caused by exhaustion. It's incredible how it lines up with what the Stoics were saying thousands of years ago.
Okay, and what about the neurology? Why is that sacred pause so hard to find? Why do we just react?
Antonio Damasio's work on the neuroscience of impulse gives us the answer. Our immediate urge to respond, to please, to react. It comes from our limbic system.
Our primitive survival brain.
Right. And it is literally milliseconds faster than our prefrontal cortex, which is our reasoning center.
So that ping of guilt, when you don't answer a text right away, that's not a moral failure. That's just an ancient survival mechanism trying to keep you in the tribe's good graces.
Precisely. The impulse to respond immediately comes from an automatic protective place, not a conscious, reasoned choice.
And just understanding that gives you the power to intervene.
It does. It gives you the power to intentionally create that sacred pause that Viktor Frankl talked about, that space between stimulus and response. That's where your freedom lies.
So now let's pivot and look at how our absence is perceived from the outside. The sources say this is just a cold, hard sociological and economic principle.
It is. It's the principle of scarcity. And it can be a tough pill to swallow.
So it's literally supply and demand, but for people.
In a way, yes. Georg Simmel wrote about this in The Sociology of Secrecy. He argued that concealment, mystery, and scarcity are what create value and power.
And when you make yourself completely available, completely known, completely predictable,
Your perceived worth just plummets. Why would anyone value or respect something that's always guaranteed to be there for free?
that's the cold economic truth. When you're everywhere, you're valued nowhere.
And Robert Cialdini's research on influence confirms it. Scarcity increases perceived value. Abundance diminishes it. By being constantly available, we're devaluing our own presence, our own time, our own energy.
And this leads to another really important concept in our relationships, the idea of moral hazard.
Yes, which is a term from economics, but it applies perfectly to emotional dynamics. A moral hazard is when one party is protected from risk, so they behave more recklessly.
Okay, so how does that work in a relationship?
If you are always the one who absorbs the emotional cost, you're always available, always forgiving, always providing comfort that isn't returned, you create a moral hazard.
The other person can be thoughtless or demanding or just not plan ahead.
Because they know there's no real cost to them. They know you'll be there to clean up the mess, to be the shock absorber, to manage the fallout.
And your constant availability actually prevents them from having to develop their own emotional maturity.
It does. Your exhaustion, your depletion, your resentment, that is the price you pay for subsidizing their behavior. You're enabling them.
So when you finally become unavailable, they panic because they suddenly have to bear the cost of their own actions for the first time.
That's the fundamental aha moment. Your kindness wasn't just kindness. It was being leveraged as a reliable, zero-cost resource.
It's a resource extraction dynamic that's just disguised as a relationship.
And trying to break that dynamic is painful, which leads us right into the shadow dance of manipulation.
Section 4. Okay, so once we start setting these boundaries, the manipulation can begin. And it starts deep in the psyche with Jungian projection.
Right. Projection is that defense mechanism where we unconsciously push onto other people the parts of ourselves we can't stand to see, our flaws, our unmet needs, our shadow.
And the person who's always available, the peacekeeper, the rescuer, they're the perfect target for this, aren't they?
They're the perfect target because they become a completely non-threatening receptacle, a blank canvas for all these projections.
So the other person isn't even relating to you anymore.
Not at all. They're relating to the idea of you, the role you play, which conveniently holds all the stuff they don't want to deal with themselves.
Now, things can get even more complex.
Yeah.
The material introduced a more intense dynamic called projective identification. That sounds clinical. We need to break that down.
It is a bit more intense. Otto Kernberg described it as a more subtle and manipulative form of projection. It goes a step further.
How so?
So, in this dynamic, the manipulator projects their disowned feelings. Let's say it's a feeling of overwhelming helplessness onto the available person.
Okay.
But then they subtly, often non-verbally, manipulate that person into acting out that feeling of helplessness. You start to feel incompetent, anxious, and helpless yourself.
Wait, so I could be feeling an intense wave of guilt or anxiety that isn't even mine? I'm fighting someone else's feelings?
That's exactly it. You genuinely believe you're responding to your own internal crisis. Oh my God, I'm being so selfish for setting this boundary. When in reality, you are carrying the emotional baggage that was projected onto you.
That's terrifying. How do you even begin to untangle that?
It requires profound emotional sovereignty. It requires that sacred pause where you stop and ask, is this feeling truly mine? Or am I reacting to a pressure that came from outside of me?
That level of confusion is why Martin Buber's distinction between an I-it relationship and an I-thou relationship is so helpful.
It's a lifesaver. It gives you the language to tell the difference between a real connection and a utility exchange.
An I-thou relationship is the
No,
goal,
well-
right? A genuine encounter between two whole people.
It is. But so many of our dynamics fall into the I-it category. That's where one person treats the other as an object to be used, an it.
A tool for their own emotional regulation.
Right. If someone only calls you when they're in a crisis or only ever needs you to be a sounding board for their drama, they are relating to you as a function, an it, not as a whole person, a thou.
So by being constantly available, I'm basically putting a sign on my back that says, treat me like an object.
You're making yourself useful above all else. And this gets back to the price of non-reciprocity. People who want you always available don't actually want you.
They want what I provide.
The comfort, the distraction, the regulation. So the moment you set a boundary and stop providing that,
They get irritated. Not because I've changed as a person, but because their favorite tool just stopped working.
it's a loss of utility. And they'll often translate that loss into emotional attacks. You're selfish, you've changed, you don't care anymore.
But the sources say the most effective manipulation happens in the silence of guilt.
Oh, that's the most powerful kind. It's that internal pressure you feel, that sense that you owe them your availability even when it's destroying you. The manipulator doesn't even have to say anything. They just have to count on you reacting from that ingrained guilt.
And when you stop reacting, the whole game breaks.
The game is over.
Okay, so this brings a huge emotional weight on the person trying to set the boundary. How do we build the resilience to withstand that backlash?
This is where Murray Bowen's concept of differentiation of self becomes our guidepost. It's our armor.
So what is differentiation?
It's the ability to maintain your own emotional balance, your own sense of self, while staying in contact with others, especially during conflict.
So you can be in a chaotic room without absorbing the chaos.
Exactly. Poor differentiation means you're an emotional reactor. Your internal state is always shifting to match the pressure around you.
But good differentiation means you stay calm and centered.
Yep.
You choose your response from your own core, not from their pressure.
And this just blows up that romantic idea that real love means complete emotional fusion and constant availability.
That's not intimacy, that's enmeshment.
It is. Healthy relationships require two distinct, differentiated individuals. So conscious unavailability is actually the foundation for real intimacy because you're connecting as two whole, sovereign people.
Okay, so moving into our last section, let's talk about the practice. The moment of withdrawal itself. The silence.
The weapon of sacred silence. And I use the word weapon deliberately, but it's not about aggression. It's not passive silence.
It's strategic.
It's a strategic, lucid silence. It's the ultimate mastery over your own energy. It's a refusal to be dragged into someone else's drama. It's a stillness that isn't an absence, but an amplified presence, because all your energy is being held inside you.
Jung saw silence as a fertile ground for transformation. But why is it so threatening to people who are used to controlling you?
Because silence breaks their narrative control. As long as you're talking, defending, explaining, you're still playing their game.
You're on their field.
Exactly. The moment you go silent, you change the rules. Your unavailability becomes a threat because it forces them to confront their own emptiness, their own shadow.
So when the attack comes, you're being cold, You're selfish? That's not about my character.
It's their shadow emerging because it no longer has a comfortable place to live inside of you. Like Jung said, we don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your silence forces their darkness into the light.
And this strategic silence, it requires what the sources call a period of sacred isolation.
Yes, the process of individuation requires isolation. Jung was very clear on this. You need an inner retreat to rebuild your identity based on your own center, not on what other people think of you.
It's the departure from the familiar world in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey.
It is. It's leaving the village of people-pleasing. But that means you have to enter what Campbell called the belly of the whale.
Which sounds terrifying.
It is a period of profound isolation where the old, accommodating self has to die. And the trials you face in there, the intense guilt, the loneliness, the feeling you're failing everyone, they aren't punishments.
They're initiation.
They're initiations into your authentic self.
And that gut-wrenching discomfort we feel when we first try this.
Yeah.
What do we do with that?
You have to see that discomfort as proof that it's working. Your nervous system is learning a new truth. Safety does not require submission.
That's a huge reframe.
It is. You've been conditioned for decades to believe that putting yourself first is wrong. So of course it feels uncomfortable. Treat that discomfort as a sign that you are successfully breaking the conditioning.
Okay, so let's get into the practical, actionable steps. How do we start this alchemy of conscious selectivity?
We need a framework. And a great one is the concept of the wise mind, which comes from dialectical behavior therapy.
The wise mind.
It's the integration of your emotional mind, which is impulsive and reactive, and your rational mind, which is logical and long-term. The wise mind is the balance point in the middle.
So it's the checkpoint you use in that sacred pause.
Exactly. Before you react, you pause and ask, what does my wise mind say here? Am I about to react from an old pattern of guilt, or am I choosing what serves my highest good?
And that process leads to small actions that build up over time.
They compound. And they can be deceptively simple.
Give us some examples.
Don't answer a non-urgent text for an hour just to prove you can. Take 3 deep breaths before replying to a triggering email.
Calmly state, I'm going to pause this conversation for now and walk away from a circular argument.
Turn your phone off for 2 hours every evening without guilt. It's not about becoming a hermit. It's about being accessible on your own terms.
But the hardest step, the ultimate boundary, is refusing to explain or justify yourself.
That's the final boss. It's the ultimate act of sovereignty. A boundary is a statement of fact, not a request for permission.
When you stop explaining, you take away their power to negotiate or manipulate your boundary.
You do. But if I stop explaining, won't people just get mad and leave?
The people who leave are the people who needed you to be a function, not a person. Their anger isn't because you were unclear, it's because you stopped being a reliable tool.
You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your peace.
And the result of all this difficult work, the rebirth and sovereign intimacy.
It's true freedom. It's what the sources call the solitude of total presence, this deep, unshakable strength of being whole within yourself.
You stop being a reactor, shaded by everything around you.
And you become a creator, shaping your reality from your own centered core.
And the people who were uncomfortable with your new boundaries, they reveal they never really wanted you, just the role you played. But the people who stay.
You start attracting people who are inspired by your authenticity. People who honor your no as much as your yes. Who meet you in presence, not performance.
This is the path to eudaimonia, to flourishing.
It's living in line with your deepest nature. You stop accepting emotional crumbs and you start demanding real nourishment. The paradox is that the more selectively unavailable you become, the more truly present and valuable you are when you do show up.
That shift from utility to authenticity is the whole journey.
It's the reclamation of your own soul.
The irony of conscious unavailability is that while you may lose people who only valued your utility, you gain an authentic presence that makes you truly valuable, rare, and unforgettable. Your legacy will not be built on how many people you pleased, but on how deeply and honestly you dared to live from your sovereign center. Your unavailability does not make you less loving. It makes your compassion real, because it stems from fullness, not from exhaustion, guilt, or emptiness.
When you operate from a place of genuine knowing and internal power, your presence carries true weight.
We've reached the end of another episode. See you in the next ones.